I was inspired by Kevin's introduction when he sent it to me. And I just want to read something from that. We'll begin there. And 2 seconds. This is where I got the red pen on my trousers, right, Kevin? It's your fault. We will say no more, right? So he begins with, "The days are coming when I will send a famine through the land, says the Lord. Not a famine of bread or a thirst for water, but a famine of hearing the word." The area that I work in is broad, but what I've done today is I've tried to concise down into 30 minutes or 35, if that's all right, Kevin. Something that I could speak about academically, but I'd rather tame it down and speak about it in a very understandable and simple way. So I'm just going to move on with the slides. The human mind, I would say, is one of the greatest of the wonders in the universe. But what is the mind? And is it an it at all? Or is it formless, like an energy field? If we think about and consider how we speak of mind, it can give us a sense of that it might be something that we can be in or that we can be out of. And we'll say things like, "Sure, that fella is out of his mind." Or it might be something that we know or we don't know. "Sure, she doesn't know her own mind." Or it might be something that has to do with how we take care of ourselves. Mind yourself now, Kevin. There's a cable on the floor there you could slip on. So we ask ourselves, what is mind? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a very simple model of mind that I devised over the last 25 years as I've meandered through this in both my personal experience and then in my training as a clinical hypnotherapist and psychotherapist and a master of cognitive behavioral therapy. And before I show you this simple model of mind and talk it through and bring us to the place where we consider words, the audible spoken word, the communication that continues all of the time, whether by the way we're speaking or not, I would ask us to consider that the mind is not a thing. It's not a thing. And if it's not a thing, then is it an essence? Is it a force? Is it an energy field? And I would like to point out that after thousands of years of debate on the mind, we have still not, just like the essence of life force itself, been able to pinpoint what it is. And one thing's for sure, we haven't established that it is an it. So here's a simple model of mind. Freud was the first one to use the analogy of the iceberg. I'd like to point out for anyone here that's an academic in the field that my use of subconscious is definitely not aligned with that of Freud's. So very simply, if we look at the iceberg here, this is just an analogy to represent your mind. My mind. Everybody here has a mind. It's the one thing that unites all of humanity, our mind. And as you see at the very top with the tip, so if I'm in that little boat out on the lake and I meet you and you say hello to me, I'm meeting the tip. I'm meeting the conscious thinking, aware you that you show the world. Does that make sense? And just like the iceberg, we know that there is so much more there beneath the surface. So our thinking, conscious, aware self, which is listening to me today, where I hear, I see, I smell, I'm aware, and when I sleep at night, the I that is sleeping is my thinky, tip self. However, the rest of the mind never sleeps. It's awake 24/7. It's been called the subconscious. I'll use that term, but I really mean anything that is other than what you are consciously aware of, which is a lot. Okay? But we live and we function through our daily thinking mind. And thanks to Kevin and this phenomenal experience for the last few days, that mind is prodded and poked, and we are encouraged to use it. I am your subconscious mind. I never sleep. I am functional all of the time, and our subconscious deals with trillions and trillions of things all at the same time. As you're sitting here right now, it is functioning fully while you can think and focus on me. Or perhaps your mind gets distracted and you're wondering, is that the alarm in your car going off outside? Have I silenced my phone, which I hope you have, etc. So very simply, in our subconscious, it deals with everything. It stores everything we've ever learned, our habits, the maths, that astronomical, phenomenal knowledge that those monks traveled around with. They could think, but it was stored somewhere. And it was stored in part of the vastness that is our other than thinking conscious mind, the subconscious. Subconscious also deals with our physical, our heart rate, our blood pressure, our cellular reproduction. I'm talking everything that is other than what you are consciously aware of is the other than conscious, which is commonly called subconscious. But I'm defining what I mean by it because there's a lot of confusion out there. Okay. So the subconscious, the psyche, all the things we've learned, all the things we know, all the things we believe, and the physical. It's the master of all. This is fact, this is truth, this is scientific fact, this is beyond debate. A bit like the sphericality of our planet. And yet, I'm sure you may have heard of them, there are flat worlders. Have you heard of that? Massive movement. Who still believe the world is flat and are out there proving it. Fact. And we talk about truth, so we'll get there in our discussion later on, hopefully. Okay, so I have to flick through this. You get it, though. Is that okay? Very simple. We won't go too deep into it. Okay. So we're asked to sleep on it. Do you ever have something that you just can't work out and it's addling you and there's just too much going on with it, and a good friend will come up to you and say, listen, girl, just sleep on it for a few nights. And what they're really saying is stop, what? Thinking about it, yes? So stop using the thinky bit at the top, the tip. So when I'm talking to you now and I'm copying my triangle that I had, if I go like this, I'm the thinky tip talking. Does that make sense? And if I'm going like this, it's like the rest of our mind, subconscious. So when we sleep on it and we stop thinking about it, the rest of our mind gets to process it. This is just a fact. I'm going to speak about so many obvious known facts, but the reason I bring them up is because we don't think about the obvious. True or false? And I think there's a dire necessity on the planet to pause and go back to some fundamental basics so that we can align ourselves and find our truth, which is what Kevin has pivoted this whole event around. So moving on. I need to finish at about 25 past it. Kevin Finnerty. The three Kevins, Kevin Jr., Kevin Finnerty, and our lovely Kevin here. Yes. Okay. So there's a lot going on. Conscious, and our conscious thinking aspect of our mind can deal with 5 to 9 things all at the same time. That's a fact. And that's why phone numbers were only about 5 digits before we came into the digital age and we could store them on our phones. Because there was only so much you could hold on to in our thinky tip. It's stored in the rest of our subconscious all the other details, which deals with trillions of things. Okay. So now, let's have a look at the bio of it all, the biology. Here we are, all sitting together, and I'm walking along over and back, and Declan's outside enjoying the sun. And we're all comprised of cells. Just start at the basics. And as you sit there right now, your body, everybody's body here, is made up of cells. Trillions and trillions and trillions of cells. They estimate around 70 trillion cells. So as you sit there, and I'd ask you to pause and reflect on your body from your toes, literally do it, to your knees, to your buttocks, to your back, to the hair that's growing on your head. They're all cells. So we're made up of 70 trillion, not million, not billion, trillion cells. You are a community of cells that are all interacting and talking with each other. And while you're thinking about where this one is going with this talk, your subconscious is taking care of all of that. Does that make sense? Excellent. Have you? Good. Okay, going to dive a bit deeper just for a moment because it's important later on. You've all heard of the atom? Excellent. Are you awake? Can you hear me? Have you all heard of the atom? Yeah. Excellent. Okay. So the atom is for anything that's made of matter or solid, the atom is the smallest component that you can have where it's still, I suppose, stable, and it forms everything that is matter, everything that is on the planet, in the universe, everything that we know of that's a thing that's matter is made from atoms. So each of your 70 trillion cells that makes you you is made of atoms. I'm going somewhere with this, so bear with me. And it's estimated that we're made up of 7 octillion atoms. That's an actual number. And that's a 7 with 27 zeros behind it. So you are a community of 7 octillion atoms right now. So am I. So are we all. Oh, I'm going to freak you all out with this now, just for a moment. And it's now been scientifically proven for quite a while that 99.999999999% of every atom is actually not solid at all. It's empty space. Slow down for a second. Okay, here we go. Going to help you understand this one. Going to imagine that me and Kevin Myers have gone to Croke Park or to some fine big stadium. And I've said to Kevin, we're standing up in the very back. I want you to imagine this, literally imagine it now. Let's say it's Croke Park or wherever. And we're up at the very back of the stadium, looking down into the middle of the field. And I've got a few tennis balls with me, and I've said to Declan Ganley, Declan, run round the far side of that stadium there with that tennis ball. And I've said to my sister Mary, Mary, go down there to the very west end with that tennis ball, and we're going to make Kevin Myers work. So we're giving him a €2 coin. And we're saying, Kevin, I want you to walk into the middle of the field way down there. Are you with me now? Are you actually doing it? This is important. Okay. So Kevin's down there with this tiny €2 coin in the middle of the field. And myself and Declan Ganley and Mary, we're up here, we're holding tennis balls. These tennis balls represent the electrons that rotate around the nucleus of every atom that makes you you. And the nucleus is represented by the €2 in the middle of the field. You getting this? This is real science. This is the quantum physics of it. The rest, up until recently, because we were only looking for matter, we were only looking for something that was solid, the rest was believed to be empty space. With me? Okay. So the 70 trillion cells that make you, and the 7 octillion atoms that make you, 99.9999999% of that is not solid matter. But we know it's not empty space. Anyone guessing what it is? It's energy. Good on. Don't know what's going on with the mic. Are we okay? Yeah. So here we are. Pretty complex, phenomenal beings as humans, right? So we're not made of empty space. That empty space is actually full of energy. Because, ladies and gentlemen, what we now know is that everything is energy. Everything. And energy is absolutely everything. The words that I'm speaking are energy. If I go, and I keep going like that for the next 20 minutes, you won't have a clue what I'm talking about, true or false? Because a sound with no meaning is just a noise. And the words that we speak are sounds that we now have meaning to. Sorry about this, I'll move that up. I don't know if this one's on now. It could be the batteries, it's happened to me before, but I love to move when I'm talking. Okay. So everything is energy, and energy is absolutely everything. The words that I'm speaking, the songs and the music of Percy French, Where the Mountains, or the haunting of Gortnamona. Everything is energy, and energy is everything, and energy influences us all of the time, whether we are consciously aware of it through our thinking tip mind or not. So as Kevin spoke to me earlier on about, maybe cutting down the talk a little bit, I had a quick think about what are the most important things I want people to take away with them. Well, this is a big one. I won't get into this here, but this is some of the biophysics of it. But we can measure these frequencies, and we do all the time. If we go for brain scans, if you've heard of the electroencephalogram, the EEG, well, what they're doing is they're measuring brainwave frequencies. And energy is measured in waves because energy is constantly moving. It is not static. It cannot be. It's the essence of energy. It is constantly moving. It is vibrating. Hard to grasp, but even the chair you're sitting on, the metal in the legs of those chairs, when you go down to atomic level, is vibrating. The atoms in the chair have a frequency. And we come all the way up from that to this thinking, brilliant genius that's sitting here, you. All 70 trillion cells of you communicating with each other, functioning to keep you alive and well, while your thinking mind can think and explore. Next thing I reckoned was really important for us to grasp. We tend to be very stuck, which makes sense because we're still evolving, on focusing on the energy that we can either see or feel or touch. But if we just look at this graph, and I know there's a lot on it, but bear with me. Do you see the little bit in the middle that's highlighted? That's showing within the whole range of electromagnetic energy frequency, the little piece that we can actually see. But there's so much more energy happening all around us. I'll go back just for a moment, give you an example of that, because I think it'll be easier. I think the last few days have really given us the perfect example. So I want you to think about standing out in the sun for too long and you get sunburned. What's burning you? Yes, the ultraviolet frequency, which is resonating out there, but we can't see it. Throw something in the microwave and you want to heat it up. On this spectrum, we're looking at microwaves. We can't see them, but if you leave something in there for too long, it's going to be destroyed. True or false? True. So we've developed technology where we can use these frequencies that we weren't heretofore able to see, and they're brilliant. We use them brilliantly. But I'm going somewhere with this that has to do with truth and word, so just bear with me, because I had to give you a background, had to give you a foundation of understanding to step onto. Let's go into a little bit of the psycho part of this. You see this table here? I don't know if anybody's able to give me the microphone. Is it working? We'll see. Okay. 1, 2. Yeah, it's great. Okay. All right. As you sit listening to me right now, you're in a wide awake, alert, conscious state. We're going to look at this part here. Right? And the little wiggle I had earlier on that showed the waveform of energy being measured showed that one wave happening in 1 second is called 1 hertz. I'm sure you've all seen hertz written on your electrical plugs and stuff, right? But that hertz frequency, that applies to everything that is energy. So now what we're going to look at is we're going to look at some of the energy frequencies that are happening in our brains and throughout our body, not just in our brains, but we're so used to considering the brain because it's the pinnacle of our nervous system. We'll begin there. So when you're in a fully conscious alert state in the morning, your frequency is between 12 and 38 hertz, okay? All right. What does that mean? It means I can think, I can plan, I can dash, I can brush my teeth while I'm planning my day, I can go down to the car, I can drive to town, I can think about things the whole way to town, I can meet a friend in town and she'll say, how was the drive in? And then you'll go, oh, that's right, I was driving. So what's driving the car when you're thinking? Your other than conscious, isn't that right? Your subconscious, the rest of your mind. It's a team. It's working together all of the time. But we're so focused on functioning through our thinking selves that it's like we've forgotten the rest is there. And we're so focused on what the thinking aspect of our mind loves, which is new. Like the magpie, it loves something new. Does that make sense? It's always looking for new. It really bothers me that the news will only look at what's new. What about the news from last week that still wasn't sorted? We're dashing ahead of ourselves constantly, looking for new, entertain me, new, give me a new device that can do more, new, information. I love information because it's new. Every gadget that's out there that they go after. Do you remember those spinners the kids had? My God, they were huge. Why were they huge? Because they were? For a while. Show them one of them now. They're all thrown in the bin. So we're functioning through a particular aspect of ourselves too dominantly is the next point that I wanted to get across here today. Okay. So I'd invite you all, if you're comfortable doing so, to close your eyes. And if you're not comfortable with your eyes closed, just pick a point somewhere that's comfortable to stare at and just stare. But if you are comfy, I'd ask you also to put your 2 feet flat on the ground and your hands not touching each other. And your hands not touching each other. Just let them rest apart. Eyes closed. This is so obvious. Nothing I say is not known. It's all known. As my mother used to say about one of her favourite comedians, that's the way I tell him, right? Take a moment with your eyes closed and be aware of your body breathing. Now, I'm not doing some funky hippie stuff. I literally want you to notice that your body is breathing. That your body is breathing for you, and it has been since the moment you came out of the womb. I'd invite you to notice the air traveling in. Maybe it's going through your nostrils. Maybe it's going in across your lips and tongue. And you'll be aware that the air traveling in is a little bit cooler than the air that you're breathing out. I want you to also notice that your body absolutely loves to breathe out. It's breathing in that calm, cool air. And it's breathing out, and it's letting go. It's letting go of all the toxins in your body. It's doing its job, breathing in the oxygen, breathing out and letting go. Now, if I had an EEG on the brains of all of you people in this room, and you can open your eyes when you're ready, we would scientifically be able to see that your brainwave frequencies will have changed through that little exercise. There's a slowing down that happens. And when you see the lower brainwave frequencies here, that slowing down happens also when we're watching TV. Unless you're watching a horror movie, right? It's not going to be too slow then. When you're watching your favorite show. When you're listening to your favorite music. And even if you're imagining a scene that's absolutely wonderful and divine, like in the depths of prayer, the brain waves slow down. And this is incredibly relevant, and I'm going to come to that in a moment. Just remember that. Okay. So now we're popping back to the simple model of mind, back to the psycho-biological aspect of ourselves. Our thoughts are energy too. Because remember I said everything is energy? And energy is absolutely everything. So our thoughts have a frequency. They have energy too. Once again, speaking the obvious, but something that we don't usually think about. And when we're in a relaxed state of mind, we're in what's actually called an open mind state. Same as we are when we're small children. Look back, this isn't doing its thing. There we go. As adults, the lines, do you see how the lines are open on the tip here? And you remember that the tip represents our thinking, conscious, aware self, okay? And the lines are open on this model because it's a child's mind. And the child's mind is wide open. It's not closed. It's not rigid. It's not set. And it's why I absolutely adored Connor's words in that final poem, right? That bunk, the 9th century. Learn while the twig is pliable. Is reflected here. Science is meeting with its knowledge and knowings and its discoveries. It's showing us the truth of many situations. So as an adult, that line is solid a lot of the time. Somebody might give you a new idea about something, and it'll either go in one ear and out the other, or it won't even get in through the ear at all. Because you'll be standing there looking at them going, yeah, yeah, yeah. But you haven't heard a thing they said, right? True or false? True. Okay. Kevin, are you giving me time? Okay, I need another 6 or 7 minutes now, or I won't be able to finish this out, because that'll be only a 20-minute talk, and I'll... No. Okay, just a moment. All right. All right, where are we going? So we have to skip some of these. When our mind becomes rigid and solid and older and pure, as in set in its ways, it's as if there's this guard dog sitting up there at the top of our thinky tip, and it's discerning, and it's deciding what it'll believe. It's deciding what it'll let in. Does that make sense? And it'll be there going, yeah, and inside it's going, that is a load of... yeah, sure, you're great, but I don't believe a word of it. We are influenced in our childhood enormously by the words that are spoken around us. And what forms within the young, open mind are called belief systems. Anyone here ever heard of them? Okay. The thing about a belief, and I'm fond of that because I loved the sheep you had up as well, Connor, is that a set belief within you that your mind has absolutely consolidated when you were a child feels as absolutely certain and true as if it was a fact. It feels as if what I'd call it's a knowing. It's an absolute realness. It's a definitive thing. Go up to any young man who's got the bombs beneath his jacket and the trigger mechanism in his hand, and he's been reared since he came out of his mother's womb to do this great deed. And if I give you 10 minutes to try and change his mind, will you be able to? No. And you won't, because the belief systems got in when he was young, and they're solid, and they're set, and he truly believes that this is truth. Because belief systems feel with the same energy as truth in the undiscerning, unenlightened mind. These minds Connor spoke of, they were enlightened minds. They thought beyond the spectrum. They dove deep. They opened their minds to possibilities. They opened their minds to the divine knowing. True or false, Connor? Absolutely. And look at the amount of knowledge they had access to. Were they closed minds, do you think? Were they minds that were stuck in a thinky tip that's always looking for what's new, just to keep it entertained? No. And these were compassionate minds. So a belief feels as sure as a knowing. And it will influence how we see the world. And it will influence what we can accept. And if you're reared in a negative spectrum, you may see things that the glass is always half empty. And if you're reared in a positive, uplifting spectrum where confidence is built into you, you'd say, sure, it's not too bad, isn't there? Still half a glass there. So beliefs, core. I'm going to jump and I'm just going to talk for a moment without the slides. We're here on a mission to discuss what truth is. We're here to discover if we can actually find our way back to truth. And in my experience, in the last 25 years working with this, studying this, not just in one-to-one work with clients, but in meeting people who've actually achieved profound healings at a level that's outside of the medical model through use of the energy frequencies of their mind, their visualizations, their belief and their faith. Miracles of a modern time that are occurring outside of the church are happening all of the time. We live in a time, however, when we're not educated in how our mind works, true or false. Did anyone ever sit you down and say, here, Agra, this is what makes you you. This is what influences you. This is why that feels real. And you might just think you're a piece of shit. You're beautiful. You're the divine. If you don't know how your mind works, and if you don't know how that first belief system got in there, and why your uninformed, beautiful child mind believed it to be true, you will like to hear me telling you you're a stunning, beautiful being of light. But will you feel it? Yes or no, lads? I am the last 15 years looking at the new, I don't know if I'm using the term right, woke, enlightened movement that's happening on the planet, and a lot of it is fantastic. But it drives me nuts when I see just this as the selling point for a course. Believe and you can achieve. Believe and you can conceive. Believe and you can move the world. They're right, actually. But how do you get yourself to what? Believe. That's the bit that nobody tells you about, because that's where nobody's going. True or false, lads? Seriously, give me a help here. And I wrote in my trousers before I came up in the brand new. Do you get, right? So I've only a few minutes to finish up, and the rest was amazing, and it showed you frequencies and planet Earth and all of that. That's for a full day someday, a workshop. If you don't know how to believe, how are you ever going to achieve? Your day will be a struggle, and you'll try your best to pull yourself out of the pits. You will try to stop repeating the same patterns that have tripped you up all of your life. You'll do it again. You'll have pissed another person off or whatever, excuse my language, Father, and you'll sit down with yourself and go, why do I keep doing that? True or false? Because nobody's taught you how your mind works. This fundamental education in what we are, who we are, and how we function is left off all the agendas. It's been pushed into a corner, and it's presumed it's for people who are not well. True or false? News alert. And this isn't new. The whole planet is not well. We've never had more pharmaceuticals. Never. We've never had more drugs. We've never had more things that we can take that are from outside of ourselves to try and make ourselves better. And at the same time that that's happening, we've never been as sick. That's a fact. Where I'm going is so fundamental, it actually bothers people because they're too busy running after something else. I'm saying slow down. Each individual has to get this. It is our responsibility to mature within ourselves. And I say, from my position, we can only do that when we truly know what we are and how we function, and how every word that we hear, whether it's spoken or in an image. I had lovely pictures later on of kids holding phones, and we're bombarded with information. Constant. But we don't understand the mechanism that all of that data is going into, which is us. And we wonder why we're so sick. And we wonder why we're so distracted. And we wonder why we're so depressed or radical. The biopsychophysics of you is everything. Your mind is not an it. It's not just in your brain. It's the whole energy frequency through which you function. You are primable beyond. I mean, some of the experiments, I'll give you a small little one, and I want you to keep someone in mind that's just gone out of the presidential office in the USA while I'm saying this. Professor John Bargan, NYU, has been working in how primable and influenceable we are since the 80s. When he gave his first findings, he was actually booed off the stage by his own peers, and somebody threw a tomato at him. That lecture was given to academics in the university because they didn't like what they were hearing. And what they were hearing was this, one of his experiments. He got students, he brought them in to unscramble some words, yeah, and just make it a sentence that makes sense. Half the students were unscrambling words that had hidden within the sentences subliminal words that if you really studied it subconsciously, might lean towards an elderly stereotype. Things like Florida, mobile homes. Do you get me? Things that point towards grey. But they never mentioned the word old. Never. Or aging. Never. Half the students were unscrambling all that. The other half students were just unscrambling regular stuff that really didn't mean much. When the students walked out the door, they were told, with their little sheet, they'd unscramble it all, go to the end of the hall there and hand that to Mary, please. Sorry, I can't take that. What the students didn't know is that they were being timed. The duration it took them to walk from here to there. Guess what happened? And they repeated this study 7 times with almost 1,000 students because they couldn't believe what they were seeing. What happened with the students that were subliminally primed with an elderly stereotype? Any guesses? They walked slower. Now, be under no illusion, my dear people, that people on the political scene that are trying to influence you know how primeable your mind is. Advertisers do it all the time. That's why the guy that the lonely girl who's just moved into the apartment downstairs happens to find when she needs some coffee upstairs in her neighbouring apartment is drop dead gorgeous. Emotion opens the mind and they know it. I've been to some of these snake oil sales training things and they're teaching this. And they're saying, emote your audience first. Because an emotional mind is an open mind. And when the mind is open, you can drop in your seed. This talk is about what we're not being taught. This talk is asking us all to consider going back to the fundamental basics of ourselves. Stop running after the new. The temple of God, and I'm not a religious person, but I call it the temple of knowing, is within every single one of us. That energy field that is you is the essence of creation, and it can create anything, including phenomenal healings of mind and body. But until we know these things, we are literally like the ping pong ball and the old things we used to have in Tulsk, where I grew up in the Feroiga Club. We're being pulled and prodded and we're boing, 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 oh, all through our life, out the other end, and we don't even know how it happened. True or false? The education of this is to learn how to pause. If I had time, I would teach you about that. To learn how to be in a state of mind and being that is other than thinking. In that state, we now know scientifically, we get younger. The telomerase in our DNA actually acts more, we've more of it. You ever see someone and you meet them and you go, Jesus, Margaret, it's like 10 years have dropped off you. It actually happens. Cellularly, we youthify. We're smarter. We think more accurately. We're able to handle much more of the information on God's planet when we're in these states of mind. I was watching what Conrad up there and I was like, did anyone else look at all that and go, how could these people know all that? Did anyone else? This little monk from Ireland got in teaching the 7 different disciplines, having a grasp of astronomy, physics at all. I'm going to leave on that. I'm going to thank you for your time. I'm going to thank Kevin for the wonderful platform, because what I'm saying is a bit radical, but lads, it shouldn't be. This should be old news by now. Sadly, it's not, and I believe it's why we're in the mess we're in right now. God bless and thank you for your time.